is the Pegasus Podcast, presented by Night Sports Now. UCF news, views, and a few hot takes. Now, here are your hosts, Bailey Go Knights Adams and Christian Charge On Simmons.
Welcome into episode 251. Be sure you're following us on Twitter at BaileyJAdams22, at ByCASimmons, at Night Sports Now, and at Pegasus Podcast. You can also email us at PegasusPodcastByKSN@gmail.com. Christian, how's it going?
It's cold.
It is cold. I like it.
I'm doing a thing. Well, I'm doing a thing. I've done a thing. Is I really like the cold. I live in the wrong state. And one of the things I do at my apartment is I've never turned the heat on, and I have no intention of ever turning the heat on. And one of the cool things about that is my bedroom is on the outer wall. So my bedroom remains the exact temperature of whatever outside is when it's cold. And that's great for me sleeping because I get all bundled up and I sleep like a little hibernating bear. I didn't think about how I record the podcast in my room, and it is very cold in my room. I'm basically in 50-degree weather, so I'm having a great time.
I'm kind of jealous. I've made this whole afternoon and evening difficult for myself by deciding at like 4:15. Yeah, I have time to like go get a quick workout in at the gym. And then I went to the gym, and then I was like, yeah, I have enough time to jump in the shower real quick. And so like I just took a shower and I'm like still sweating. I hate that. Like it's just like one of my least favorite feelings. So I'm still like really warm and sweaty, even though I just showered. And it's not ideal.
You also literally 45 seconds before we were set to record told me, by the way, I have a heart out and it's in like an hour.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And in the process of getting ready, like I got home from the gym, was getting ready to take a shower, and I had a friend text me and said, hey, we're going to the Lightning game. Do you want to go? And it's one of my friends who I invited like last week. I was like, hey, do you want to go to the Lightning game on Tuesday? And he was like, oh, I don't know. He's like, he's in town from DC. And he's like, I might be moving my flight up to Wednesday morning. So I might not be able to go. And I was like, all right, that's fine. And that same friend and another friend just texted me and were like, hey, do you want to go to the Lightning game? And I was like, what happened here? So apparently that's happening. And yeah.
Well, luckily, really nothing worth talking about happened in the UCF community this week. So should be a pretty quick pod.
It's another news podcast, but it's also a news and a mailbag podcast. So yeah, a lot to get through.
Can I just say really quickly that I've been, since we have so much time to spare, that I've been feeling like I don't recall in previous years, even when Gus went portal heavy, us having to do this many just straight up news podcasts. And then I realized that UCF, I believe, is close to or either actually leading the nation right now in portal editions, which is part of why it feels this way. But
normally they already have a team in place.
That is true. They were down more than 40 players by the time that Frost rolled in. So that does hurt.
It is weird. It's especially weird them not going to a bowl. And we've had to cover the last month plus of podcasts already. And so it's like we're already kind of into the spot where it's like, wow, it's been a long time since we've done a game preview pod, and we've got a long off season to cover. So
all of the bowl ratings, the TV ratings for the bowl games came out this week, and my idiot brain clicked the link thinking, what did UCF's bowl do? And like as the page is loading, I'm like, wait a minute, they didn't go to one.
What's also funny is you brought up the other day, you're like, well, this week last year we did our like postseason awards thing, and I was like, I don't feel like doing that. This like when the season ended for UCF on Black Friday, and then the coach left the next day, and I was like, at that point, no one cared about last season anymore.
Yeah.
So it's not even worth just being like, hey, RJ Harvey wins all the awards.
That's what I was laughing at, the idea of us right now with everything happening and then like landing a new quarterback, us being like, remember RJ Harvey? Wasn't he good?
Which is kind of sad, like, because you're like, oh, we got to move on from him, and we got to move on from.
I've said this theory. I think I've even said it on the podcast. I know I've said it to you. RJ Harvey is going to be so wholly and completely forgotten by this fan base in the coming years. I am certain of that. Because and I learned that in a hard way this season when we had absolute morons saying that RJ Harvey was like the best player in program history, or like Mackenzie Milton wasn't very good. And when they're saying that about like the guy who like was the best player on the best team in program history, you can bet no one is going to be talking about the guy who did all this cool stuff when they went 4-8. So like I unfortunately it's not right, and I don't agree with it, but he is going to get so forgotten in the coming years.
Yeah, well, it's going to be my mission to not let that happen. I'm just going to remind everyone. I should just do a RJ Harvey segment of the week and just talk about something cool he did that one time.
Maybe we should name something after him, like the RJ Harvey football news or something, like just so his name stays prevalent. I love how I love how. Oh yeah, I guess that's a good point. Well, I didn't mean it like in memoriam.
I know, but I don't know. I feel like that always happens when I don't know.
I also love the insane value we're assigning to our show, where I'm like, if we name something after RJ Harvey, the whole fan base will never forget what he's done for UCF.
Everyone listens to us. All right, let's get into the RJ Harvey football news of the week. So we'll start with, I guess, the most important position everybody loves to talk about is the quarterback position. We don't know who's going to start for UCF next year, but could it be new quarterback from Indiana, Tayven Jackson?
Who?
I don't like that you did that. I don't know, man. It's what number quarterback was he in like the offseason search? How many were linked to UCF before him?
Oh, it was significant. It was several quarterback rooms worth of quarterbacks. It feels like they went. That's why I'm not. And listen, after basically the first week played out of the portal, I think it became pretty clear that UCF was not going to land a star quarterback.
Yeah.
To me, and I could be way off base, Tayven Jackson, if you're discovering for the first time that UCF has signed a quarterback, Tayven Jackson came from Indiana. And before Indiana, he was at Tennessee, and he went to Indiana in 2023 and was initially the starter. Then he lost the starting job midway through that season, and then he served as the backup during their big run this year. He was Curtis Rourke's backup. He did start one game for them. He started the Washington game and was largely fine. It was a pretty pedestrian stat line. Nothing horrible, nothing great. And he's the guy they've ended up with. He has, I believe, 2 years of eligibility left, kind of like what JRP came in with. I could be so super off base, and we just don't know. Maybe Scott Frost is like, I love this guy, and he's the future. This feels as much of a maybe he'll be our starter play as a this is insurance the room needed play. Nothing about Tayven Jackson's body of work makes me think that Dylan Risk is now out of it. That is Jakari Brown even out of it? I feel like there is going to be an open competition this spring. Now, that being said, given how the portal market has evolved this year, I think there's a decent chance UCF paid a pretty decent chunk of money to get Tayven Jackson. I wonder how that comes into play. How do you justify that to people who help pay that? I don't know, but nothing about his body of work has me thinking UCF has for sure found their guy, and I am definitely down with saying goodbye to Risk forever because this guy's in the room now.
I wouldn't either, and I'm thinking almost have an open competition this spring, and I'm still on board with like see what you have in the spring, and then if anybody comes available after spring, dip your toe in there and see if there's anything going on out there, because I don't know. Like there again, like the idea of maybe them paying, I don't know how much they paid or how much he would have gotten, but the idea of the money they paid Tayven Jackson coming into factor into the decision of who's going to start at quarterback makes me shiver, because nothing really about his body of work means he should have, gotten that much money. Like he should.
Well, I want to say first off, we don't know if he got some big payday or not. I'm basing that off of, if you have not been following the portal cycle this year, the money has been unlike anything we've ever seen before. Like what they paid, I'm seriously dead serious. Like what it's rumored that they paid for KJ Jefferson last year is this year what you would pay for like a backup offensive lineman. Like the money has been crazy, and it sounds like UCF's done a pretty decent job of trying to keep up, all things considered. So but I just mean from that perspective, I do wonder, because I don't know if we've seen it at UCF, because obviously they paid KJ a lot and then they benched him pretty quickly, but that has to be a conversation that happens at some point, right? Like say that it's fall camp, and I don't know, Tayven Jackson and Risk are kind of maybe Risk looks, it's hard to tell from practice who's the better quarterback. Is there not going to be a conversation somewhere of like, we really leaned on a couple of our bigger boosters to pay this guy? Are we really just going to not play? Like, I don't know. That has to be a conversation that comes up these days.
Yeah. And I don't know. I guess I'm still getting used to that result of what college football's turned into, or that bothers me, but like, there's nothing I can do about it. And that's just kind of how it's going to be. If I agree with players getting paid, so I can't really be mad at that, but it's just like, oh man, like you're getting yourself into some situations here.
And to be totally honest, Tayven Jackson might just be what they need this year if they don't feel like Risk is the guy, because he's it's low risk, low reward, I feel like, is probably how I would quantify Tayven Jackson. I don't think, I could be wrong, we've been wrong about plenty of things over the years. Nothing about his body of work strikes me as a guy who is going to pop off and be like the next UCF superstar, but I also don't think he's going to go out there and just flat out lose them games or be terrible. And I think he's someone who, if you have this transition year in 2025 where you're bringing in a lot of new faces and you are going to be throwing a lot of young guys out there, presumably like wide receiver, they still have like no one, so there's going to be young guys out there, is maybe it's not the worst thing to have a quarterback who's just kind of balanced and can sort of keep things steady. And maybe he improves enough that come 2026, you're a little more reloaded, and maybe he can remain the guy and be a guy who helps them have a strong season.
There's something stupid in my brain that's like, I kind of like being in that spot more than last offseason when it was like they got KJ Jefferson. This guy is a star. We had a topic on here where we were talking about, what does he have to do to be, one of UCF's all-time greats? Like, what kind of season does he have to have? We put all these parameters on it, and then he was benched 4 or 5 games in. Like, I almost am kind of like, yeah, we'll kind of just see what happens. I kind of like that better than being in expectation mode, which I don't know. I think that's just cope, but it's also true, I think.
I think I would have strongly preferred if KJ had just, lived up to the hype.
Oh, I mean, I would have too, but he didn't. So
it's kind of funny how things change looking a year back. Because obviously, like, there was no one, don't let anyone tell you that a year ago there was some group of people going, oh, KJ might suck. It's like there was no, like, he was
not
supposed
until
to
like
be,
July.
Well, because, by July, rumors were starting to come out of how things were going. It was like, and I don't remember if we were discussing that on the podcast yet or just being quietly scared as that was starting to leak out that he was looking not good at football. But it's kind of funny to look back because it was okay. They got KJ Jefferson and that was their big target. SJ Tui in his infamous space with JP Gilbert declared that was the only guy they ever wanted. And Grayson McCall was like a slow play or whatever. And Grayson McCall flamed out at NC State. DeQuan Finn was another guy they were into. He flamed out, but he's back in the MAC now. Like, I just, it's kind of funny how it's not even like, if they just gotten like one, it's like everyone they went after ended up not having a very good year. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, no.
I guess Tyler Shook was pretty good at Louisville, and they did go after him at one point.
Yeah. That was the one we were kind of just like, why are they doing this again?
That was the only one that we were flat out like, I don't think I want this. It was the one guy who actually ended up having a good 2024.
Yeah, we don't know much. Neither do they, I guess, though. So it's just kind of all gambling. It really is. It's just like everything is a gamble at this point.
Yeah, we don't know much and they don't know much, but they get paid 7 figures to figure it out and we don't. So I think they need to put in the work.
They should probably figure it out.
Can I derail the podcast really quickly, which is a bad idea? I'm sorry, but Gus Malzahn is tweeting booms for FSU, which I'm still seeing because, it's hard to not see the booms. Do you find it odd that he's tweeting booms as an offensive coordinator?
No.
No? I find it weird.
I don't think so. I mean, like, I don't know. Assistants will tweet about like recruits that they've landed.
I mean, they'll be like, oh, excited. Like, it's just weird that's always been his catchphrase, and now it's somehow the FSU catchphrase, even though he's not the head coach. Like, that would be
weird. I guess in that.
Although I guess we're kind of in that world with Scott Frost a little bit, because Scott Frost still will not unlock his Twitter account. It's just a photo of his kids, and it's completely dormant, and no one knows what's going on behind there. So maybe we are in that boat, but I don't know. I found that a little weird. That I just thought about it, in those weird terms of he's the OC and is the one being like, boom. I don't know.
I respect Scott Frost for that, by the way. Like.
He needs to. Bill Belichick made a Twitter, guys. Like, he needs to unlock the Twitter account. I can't believe that they've landed all these players and it's still just like silent Scott Frost.
Maybe you're just gonna have a separate one, like a head coach Scott Frost one, and then a personal one. Like
I
used to have 2 Twitter accounts, and then
I remember you having 2 Twitter accounts when we were in college and we started Night Sports. Now, like, everyone had 2 Twitter accounts except me, and I was just like, "There's nothing in my personal life worth."
Did my second one last that long? I don't even remember when I decided to.
Yeah, because I remember you had that and Sarah had the other one too. And I was like, because it was always like the weird thing of, is it your personal? And I was just like, I have one Twitter that I made when I was 17. But yeah, I shout out to Gus for that. But I do think that, wouldn't it be funny if you followed Scott? Like, if I'm going to request to follow Scott Frost and maybe he'll let me in. And wouldn't it be funny if behind the locked account, he's just tweeting like, man, this team sucks. Like, he's like, we have no good players.
We have a long way to go.
Crazy. Hashtag screwed.
Oh man, that would be funny. Actually, I don't know if it would be funny. It'd be very concerning.
Maybe he's just trash talking Nebraska. Like, they lose and he just quote tweets like LMAO.
he's just shit posting the whole time, like sending memes that you just lost to whoever, and then it's got the laser eyes. Yeah, that'd be great. I want that to be the truth. Like, I want that to be what's going on back there.
That if I could go look at his account, I promise there's just been no tweets in 5 years.
I doubt it. But I like thinking of that anyway.
Me too.
All right, should we get to the other additions?
Yeah, let's do it.
So I'll run through them quick, and then we'll talk about each. Limestone wide receiver DJ Black, Louisiana Monroe center Carter Miller, Pittsburgh defensive lineman Sincere Edwards, remember him, and Oklahoma linebacker Lewis Carter. I'll also throw in here at the same time former USC and former SMU cornerback Chasen Johnson, who has returned to UCF. He's also, if you want to call him an addition, he's back. That's great too.
That's where do you want to start?
In order, I guess. Limestone wide receiver DJ Black. If you haven't heard of Limestone, you're not alone. Wow, is it D2 or D3? I don't even remember.
It is D2. They went 8-3 this year.
Okay. I just remember his numbers looking good and me thinking way back when he originally got his first offer or whatever it was. And the first time I learned of his name, I was like, yeah, this guy seems like a guy I would like to land. You never know how that's going to translate, but they need receivers, and give him a shot because they need receivers.
I mean, when you end with a 3-game winning streak against dominant opponents like Newbury, Barton, and Mars Hill, you have to
I know Barton.
Do you really?
Yeah, there's a Bucks rookie who was from Barton College.
Barton was the military appreciation game for Limestone, whose logo appears to be a fleur-de-lis, but like with motion, like it's like rushing across the screen, which is a little.
Oh, I thought you meant it was like a GIF or something.
No, like it's got
the logo is like squeaking, moving logo.
To your point, though, I love how you were like, you have a heart out. I'm like, let's stretch every single part of this.
Let's talk about Limestone's military appreciation game. Why don't
I won't have succeeded until Bailey misses the Lightning game entirely. That's how I'll know that it was a good podcast. But yeah, it's tough because D2 is a huge jump, so I don't know how he's gonna project up. But 41 catches for 939 yards and 11 touchdowns. He's 6'3", 195. Lot to like there, and honestly, he's wide receiver 1, right? Because who the hell else? I mean, literally, I was looking at. They still need to probably add literally 2 or 3 more wide receivers. Because who's your starting 3 right now? Is it like DJ Black, Day Farmer, and Burdell Richardson? Is that seriously where we're at right now?
Probably. I don't like you asking me questions about this roster because I don't know what the roster looks like right now, other than people they've brought in. Because there's no spring roster yet, and so I'm like, I don't even know who's still around.
Maybe Kylan Fox can be a wide receiver. I don't know. They desperately like DJ Black, great addition, hopefully, but there is no way they could be done at wide receiver. I think they literally need to add like 2 or 3 more guys there.
Yeah, I think so. And I think almost. Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you, but the other thing I want to say really quickly is because I know that there's already been a bit of a push on Twitter, and I'm sure someone's listening to this, and it's like, I thought the whole point of getting Frost was we'll play the young guys. You can play the young guys, you just can't play only the young guys, and you definitely can't play the young guys who definitely should never see the field at the P4 level. And that's like UCF's like an injury away from having to do that at wide receivers, so they need more bodies in that room.
Yeah, and I mean, ideally, they can get a couple more and see how it works out. Competition's great, and yeah. I'm sure if those young guys deserve to be playing, they will get a shot to play. Like I don't know. I don't think we're at that point yet. I hope we're not.
I don't get how they haven't added more wide receivers, because if you're a wide receiver in the portal, how many schools can straight up say, if you sign this, you will be a starter in the Big 12?
Brother, how have they not signed more players at every position? Because they can do that at almost every position.
It is pretty.
So guess what? You want to be our starter? Here.
It's like, would you like to we're gifting you a starting job. There is no one else in any way who can compete with you.
They're saying, we can't guarantee you anything. And there's just a bunch of winks. They're just winking repeatedly. And they're like, Coach, why are you winking?
Like, I bet they're straight up guaranteeing it. Like the players probably like, no, I know that you can't guarantee me anything. Frost is like, oh no, we can. Like it's in the contract that you'll start.
Maybe. And yeah,
in exchange
I don't
for
know.
No money, start at our school.
I mean, I guess, is that an advantage? Or like, okay, maybe we don't have the most money to pay you, but like we do have a spot that you're.
It's like that old.
You want to play for a year and then go get money next year somewhere else? We got.
It's like the trade screen. It's like you receive no money, I receive starting wide receiver.
Yeah, maybe that's it. No, I like that one. Louisiana Monroe center Carter Miller.
Yes.
Another one where
a journey he's been on.
He has been on a journey, but kind of just looking at some of his numbers on Pro Football Focus, there's a lot to like from his last season. I mean, just kind of throughout his career, but it seems like a pretty good pass blocker, decent run blocker on the whole. I think he's had a good he's got a good foundation to work with. I don't know, is he the starting center?
Yes,
I think so. I don't know. It's just I'm curious to see how Sean Clark's going to go about. Who they did announce Sean Clark as the offensive line coach
at long last.
Like 3 weeks after he was hired, I think. Curious to see how he kind of goes about constructing this offensive line, because I'm still curious about if Walt Claire Flynn is going to move to guard, because I know he came into college as a center, but I don't know. Like, you've got a guy who's proven at the collegiate level that he can play center, and you just brought him in from the portal. I think he's probably your center. Yeah. So.
We also need to accept the reality that maybe Walt Claire Flynn isn't ready is another possibility. But either way, whether he's ready or not, it would have been actual coaching malpractice if they did not get a center from the portal. There is no way you could have just gambled that, the guy who was just a true freshman and has not seen the field will start at center at one of the most important positions for the offense. So they had to get someone there. Carter Miller, just for his backstory, he, as you talked about, was from Louisiana Monroe, did well there. No penalties at all, you told me after you checked his PFF.
What was it? I tell you, it was 11 penalties last year. He only allowed like 2 sacks and like 7 pressures total on the year, but he did have 11 penalties.
11 penalties in 12 games. He signs with Colorado at the start of the portal cycle. You can go to Colorado's website and see like his bio and everything. Then it gets reported this week. Colorado media break the news that he's flipping to Mississippi State because Colorado's O-line coach has gone there. That breaks, like 6 hours go by, and then UCF just goes, we've signed Carter Miller. So I don't know what happened in the interim where that occurred. But the one thing is a couple podcasts ago, we were talking about how college football evolves. And I said I like this cycle a lot more because at least now they can sign with schools with rev share coming up. So it gets rid of the whole players just committing to a school and then randomly leaving. This week, everyone decided to start doing that.
Wrong.
And it's just a thing again. And no one really seems to know why or how. But I mean, UCF has benefited from it with Chase and Johnson coming home. They have sort of not benefited from it with Kelly Lawson headed out. So Carter Miller, I guess, is another benefit. But yeah, we're back to no rules. It was a nice 3 weeks where we thought there were rules.
Yeah. But no, I mean, a good a guy who's played a lot and played pretty well other than the penalties. Well, so hopefully he can clean those up. Next is Pitt defensive lineman Sincere Edwards, who was committed to UCF for a while. Then Aaron Donald was like, hey, why don't you go to Pitt? And he was like, all right, cool, I will. And then he did. And he actually played 3 sacks as a freshman at Pitt. I'm so happy that he's back.
Yeah.
I couldn't, like, when I saw it, I was like, oh, and then I didn't really, because can't say I paid attention to him this past year or paid attention to Pitt football, but I looked at him when he came back. I was like, oh, he played a decent amount. Oh, he had 3 sacks. And it was kind of like similar to what we saw from John Walker. Like, obviously I didn't go back and watch his games yet or anything, but kind of that production as a true freshman gave me John Walker vibes. I'm like, all right, now UCF has both of these guys. Yeah. And I love that.
I mean, if you've been around college football enough, you know that there is quite literally no better sign for a player potentially turning into a star than them offering real tangible production as a freshman. And that's exactly what Sincere did. I don't want to like overly boil down his recruitment or his recruitment. Is that a word?
Yeah.
I just had like the semantic satiation thing where that sounded like nonsense when I said it. But I mean, literally, he was committed to UCF for almost a year. And then he took a visit to Pitt and gave an interview. He was like, yeah, Aaron Donald told me I should go to Pitt. And then he went to Pitt. And it was like the weirdest after being committed to UCF for so long. And it sucked because he was someone who would have been one of the better, more highly rated players in that class and was someone UCF had been in on for a very long time. And this is the absolute beauty of UCF's location is things like this where the coaching staff can turn over and these guys still want to come home because it's home. And yeah, this D line is like, it's the one unit on this team where I'm just like, God, they're going to be, it's too bad the rest of the team sucks because this D line is going to be like, I think maybe awesome and young, which is exciting too.
Yeah. It makes you like, I don't know, in a dream world, you can keep them all together for a few more years, but I'm sure one of them will end up leaving or like, I don't know, it'll happen.
Either way, if you manage to go into 2026 with John Walker and Sincere Edwards still, like that's a good core for like that D line, you know?
Yeah, and I hope so. I hope that's the case. That's an exciting one. Another exciting one is Oklahoma linebacker Lewis Carter.
Yeah, man.
You have the tweet that you had about him pulled up because I think you do a good job about all of those. Every time they add somebody, you can automatically have something ready to go, and you send it to me, and I'm like, okay, cool. And then
thanks, man. Appreciate that. I can't find my Lewis Carter tweet now that you've said that, but. I got it. Yeah, no, I don't know why I just lost the ability to talk. Apologies.
I complimented you and you were like, what if I just
a real thing I do in my life. I don't know how to receive compliments. So when I receive them, I tend to just shut down as a human being and try to disprove the compliment in some way. But yeah, he is a big get. And I know that unfortunately in the past we've said that and the players have sucked. So keep that in mind too. But Lewis Carter is a guy who this is not a guy that Oklahoma wanted to lose. Like there was kind of like a mini fan revolt on social media when they found out he was transferring because he was a guy who they had big plans for and had already been making an impact, especially on special teams. He'd been playing on special teams a ton and had a couple really big plays for them this year and was working his way into getting on the field and was someone that was like a young building block for SEC Oklahoma's defense who they didn't want to leave. So it's pretty wild that he's here at UCF. I mean, I think I said what did I text you? I said, it looks like he's going to be Terrence Lewis, but like actually good at football. And that's exciting. So hopefully he pans out as people expect, but that feels like a really strong pickup for this defense.
See, Terrence Lewis without the baggage, I guess.
Terrence Lewis without all the off-field nonsense. Yeah, I think that's about right.
Yeah. And again, like it's at a position where they need it, which I could say that probably about every position, but I don't know if there's any correlation to that and then Kelly Lawson decommitting and reopening his recruitment. Maybe there was, but I would have liked to keep all of them because they don't have really that many linebackers. So
I kind of wonder, and we'll see where that will partially be informed by where Kelly Lawson lands. The other thing I'd keep in mind, I don't know this. I do not know why Kelly Lawson left. The other thing I will keep in mind is that remember that these things do work both ways. You will often see headlines of a player has left a school, and then you sort of learn behind the scenes the school told him to go away. So I don't know if that's happened to Kelly Lawson, but it is a little interesting. And they do need linebackers. So I'd be surprised if UCF did that, but it is a little, I don't know. They had a really high level linebacker who's probably close to guaranteed for a starting spot. And if you're Kelly Lawson, you're like, maybe this isn't the place for me. I don't know.
I don't know, but yeah, it kind of sucks to lose him. But I think Lewis Carter having him, it's him and Pachotti from Oklahoma.
Yes.
So
UCF just said Oklahoma is where we will get our linebackers from. Thank you, Oklahoma. So that's cool.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of upside there, and I hope it pans out. We never know, like you said. Like we've said, wow, that's a big get, and then bad things happen. So I don't know.
I do think there's something to be said about a guy who is just I love guys who are young and playing very well. Like I said, it's like you try to find things and nothing's a surefire thing, but like the most projectable thing is making an impact when you're young. And there is something to be said of him being on special teams and making multiple big plays. I mean, that's a guy who's not just out there, because he gets to be on the field. That's a guy who's hungry, who's trying to make an impact every single time he's anywhere near the football. And I don't know if there's anything you want more from a linebacker than that mentality. So hopefully he's someone who UCF can start to build this defense around.
And I think like that's kind of a good segue into like that's why it's exciting to have Chasen Johnson back.
Yes,
we thought that he was gone, and now he's decided to come back for whatever the reasons are. Different rumblings behind the scenes, but good to have him back. He was a guy who played as a true freshman, made a lot of noise in spring ball last year as a true freshman, and then ended up playing in the season. And he had his own penalty issues at times, pass interferences. I think 3 or 4 of them it seemed like, but. Yeah. I think the fact that he was in there and playing pretty well, that's a good sign. And it's nice to have a guy like that back who made an impact last year and can presumably be another one of your starters or somebody you're at least going to rely on for this coming year and hopefully beyond that.
Yeah. And I do want to touch on the penalty thing because I was kind of surprised how I would not say there was anything remotely close to pushback on social media of him coming back. I think fans all understand this is a really huge win for UCF. And all you have to do is look at the type of schools that were after him when he hit the portal for them to be able to get him back here, I think is big. And I think that you're seeing stuff like that in part just because I think you have to look at, the time that Chasen hopped in the portal and a lot of these guys hopped in the portal, there was just so much uncertainty about what the hell was going to happen. And it was kind of a scary time to be affiliated with UCF, and things have really settled down. The program and the fans and the team have all rallied around Frost. And I think this was just a more welcoming environment to return home to now. And the thing about Chasen is that there were some people, and this is where I was going with this on social media, who were like, oh, but he had all these penalties and stuff. And yeah, he did. And it was frustrating, but it's also, that's what true freshmen do. They make mistakes. Right. And maybe the PFF numbers don't back this up, but if I recall right, it seemed like those penalties were ticking up as the season went along. And one thing I really remember from 2016, which was the last time UCF did their big youth project, was all the young guys got worse in the last third of the season because they're just not used to playing at that level of physicality for that long, and they just kind of get gassed as the season goes along. So that was not an alarm bell for me in any way, shape, or form. I think the production him being like a borderline, almost straight up starter as a freshman, that's a good freaking sign. And you pair him with guys like Braden Marshall and Damari Henderson and unfortunately Antoine Jackson. I mean, you really are building a secondary that could really be something next year. I'm going to stop with the Antoine Jackson.
It'll probably be a good idea.
I swear, because he also he was hurt all of last season, which probably played a role in that. But
fresh start for everyone. But they talk about like in the NFL and stuff like the rookie wall. I think there's a true freshman wall, and maybe that's part of what happened with Chasen Johnson down the stretch. But it's good to have him back. I think and I don't know, I guess this is that time of the year where every addition or every return is kind of just like, oh man, the vibes are good. But I do feel like right now the vibes are looking up, at least for this point in the offseason, or at least kind of getting more of an idea of what some different position groups are looking like, and even the coaching staff finally coming together. We're just kind of getting more of a picture of what UCF will look like in 2025. So that's
vibes are definitely getting better for defense. They're starting to put together a defense that I can feel legitimately probably pretty decent about for next year. Which again is just my theory that 2016 is going to repeat, coming to life even more.
I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to toe a line. Well, maybe I haven't tried so far, but in my mind right now, thinking for the first time, this is what I'm going to do. I'm trying to toe the line and maybe give Alex Grinch a chance. I really still don't know what that hire was about. And I look at this defense and the talent they're compiling, and I'm like, wow, this looks like it's going to be really good. And then I want to come back and say, yeah, but then I remember Alex Grinch as the defensive coordinator. I'm going to give him a chance. I guess I don't have a choice. I don't know. I didn't really ever give Ted Roof a chance, I don't think, but I don't think he deserved one. Does Grinch deserve one? I don't know.
You can argue Ted Roof really wasn't given a chance. He was fired very quickly into his first season here. But I was about to say to you, and then you took the words right out of my mouth. Yeah, I'm gonna give Alex Grinch a chance because I have literally no choice, and I'm not gonna sit here and just declare the defense is screwed. I don't think he's as bad of a DC as he's going to automatic. I don't think he's going to destroy. If they have a good defense, I don't think he will be so bad that it will just annihilate itself. But I do wonder
so bad at scheming things up that he ruins the 85 Bears.
Neutralizes all his good players, makes them terrible. That's never what we were saying. It's just there were so many concerns, and my big issue was when those concerns were being stated by other coaches and people anonymously about his X's and O's ability. I do wonder if there's always going to be kind of a cap on what the defense can do if he's the guy leading it. But who knows? Maybe he learns. Maybe he hires strong assistants he's working with different people. Maybe they can help him out and look at something and be like, hey man, this defense sucks. Don't do this. Who knows? Maybe they'll figure it out, but we'll just have to wait.
Yeah. They're starting to, some of that staff is coming together. Defensive backs coach Brandon Harris was announced last week as a new hire.
Yep.
Then there was a bunch of kind of names floated out there as guys that they were finalizing hires for or expecting to hire. Haven't been announced by UCF yet, but it seems like those are coming to fruition. Mark D'Onofrio. I don't know how to say it. Never known how to say that last name. D'Onofrio.
They're
finalizing adding him to the defensive staff. I would assume. What do they still need? A linebackers coach?
I'm almost certain he will be the linebackers coach. Yeah.
Okay. And then Zach Duvall, name everybody's familiar with from 2016, 2017.
Yep.
Expected to hire him as the strength and conditioning coach. And then on the offensive side of the ball, they've got a running backs coach in Jimmy Beal, who was Utah State's running backs coach, I believe.
That is correct.
That's another one that was expected. UCF hasn't announced these yet, but kind of like with the Sean Clark thing, it's just a matter of time, I think.
Yeah, and what's cool about Jimmy Beal is he may be the one to finally do what I've wanted UCF to be doing this whole time, where UCF presumably hires Jimmy Beal as running backs coach, and immediately Razul Faison, who was Utah State's running back this year and rushed for 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns, suddenly has UCF in his top 6 out of nowhere. And the other schools are very good schools. It's Florida State, UNC, and all those guys. So we'll see if UCF can pull that off. That would be a coup if they can get him in. He's a very good running back, would be a more than worthy replacement for RJ Harvey next year. Now, the one thing I will say about Jimmy Beal, and if he gets Faison, I'll put a pin in it, but is anyone telling you with a straight face he's an improvement over Cam Martin?
That's going to be the loss that stings, I think, for a while, is losing Cam Martin.
Losing him to Tulsa, which to me signals that UCF was not retaining him or either didn't work fast enough to retain him or whatever. That's just – I don't know why that was a miss for Frost, in my opinion. But like I said, if they get Faison out of this, I'm game. Welcome, Jimmy Beal,
I'm here for it. But anything else you want to talk about on the coaches, or should we move on to the mailbag?
For the sake of you having a Lightning game to go to, why don't we go ahead and just head on?
Allegedly. Things are falling apart behind the scenes, but who knows? We still have a lot of questions to get through, so thank you guys all for the ridiculous questions that you sent in. We didn't really talk about an order for these, so I'm just going to start throwing them out there.
Oh, good. That'll make it really fun for me.
Well, do you have an order? Because then maybe you want to do it.
Oh, okay. I rely on you for these things, Bailey. I knew I was in trouble when you asked me 30 minutes ago what questions we were doing, and I was like, I thought all the questions.
Oh yeah, I didn't know. Well, I don't know. I saw that you had liked some of them from our account, so I know in the past we've done it where it's we'll like all the ones to keep track of it, and then you're like, no, I just liked some of the ones while I was in the account. I was like, okay, so we'll do all of them. And then I told you I've only really had a chance to glance at some of these, and you said, well, some of them you had to prep for, and I said a word. Let's start with Defalk_23. If you had to compare the Gus coaching tenure at UCF to a meal/food item at Olive Garden, what would it be and why?
So what do you
think,
is a
Bailey? You question. I was going to ask you what's the worst thing on the menu, but I don't think you were going to tell me they don't have anything bad on the menu. So
I was fully going to say they don't have anything bad. I've never had bad food at Olive Garden. It's great. I don't know what you mean by that, but I will say that it's tough to figure that out. And I think the way I would best characterize the Gus Malzahn tenure in terms of UCF would be or in terms of Olive Garden, would be every Gus off season is you're a kid and your parents are saying, do you want to go to Olive Garden? You've been like, yeah. And you get in the car and you start driving. And then I feel like every Gus season is they pull into the Carrabba's parking lot. I don't know how else to characterize it in Olive Garden terms than that. So that's all I'll say on that topic.
Sure, man. I don't have like anything to add. That was a question for you anyway. So we'll be good. We'll be good there. All right. From our friend Wild Bill, Brian Peterson, he says, does Frosty, are we calling him Frosty? Is that a thing that's going on?
Rest of the podcast, I'm committing to that.
Does Frosty demand Timo bring back Pewter in 2025? How do his past Nike/Phil Knight connections help us with our love of uniforms?
So a couple things on that. The first is that as much as I love Pewter and you love Pewter and Wild Bill loves Pewter and we all love Pewter, I do think Frost it's probably low on the to-do list given the roster. So I'm not sure if they've had many in-depth conversations discussing that. That's like the first thing. Like Terry's like, have we found a quarterback? And Frost is like, have you found the Pewter jersey? I don't know. The Nike Phil Knight connections thing is interesting because that was, I don't know about Phil Knight so much as Nike, but that was some of the genesis of how UCF switched to those uniforms. And if you remember the lore from back in 2016, it was that Frost came in and was at the opening press conference for UCF and they're taking photos with the helmet. And Frost looks at it and goes, I forget who he asked. He goes, how many helmets do we have? And they go, well, this is the one, coach. And he just goes, oh, that's not gonna stay that way. And
that's the moment you fell in love with Scott Frost.
Really, pretty much, yeah. And then as the story goes from there with, which Nike released some stuff on, UCF released some stuff on, UCF then started designing their uniforms from there because Frost wanted uniforms. Nike then called them up because of, I think in part, Frost Connections and said, stop designing them. We're going to design them for you. And that was the genesis of the UCF, the 2016 to 2021 uniforms we all know and love. Another trivia specifically on Pewter is Scott Frost is directly responsible for Pewter. The set that Nike designed for UCF was black jerseys, white jerseys, and anthracite jerseys, and that was presented, and it was Scott Frost himself. I know this because I'm a freak who emailed Josh Iverson at Nike, who designed these uniforms, to ask more questions about them back in the day, and he said that they presented those three, and Frost wanted a lighter alternate that wasn't white because he thought wearing white for every road game was boring. So he wanted something else they could wear on the road, and that was where Pewter came in. So, yeah, that's all to say. I don't know. I have no idea what Frost's Nike relationship is. I don't know if that means anything for UCF, but it's never, ever going to be a bad thing to have a head coach who cares a lot about cool uniforms. Never, ever going to be a bad thing.
Yeah, I agree. And I logistically, I don't know how all that will play out, but that is, I guess, the basis of it is like the uniform revolution at UCF started with Scott Frost, and now he's back. So that should mean good things.
It's going to be UCF plays Jacksonville State. They win. Post-game presser, I get the mic. I ask Scott Frost immediately about Pewter uniforms. My credential is revoked for the rest of the season, but we'll at least get an answer.
I don't know. No, I don't think you will. You won't get an answer. Like, he's going to start answering it, and then you're just going to get like tackled and like taken away, and you're like still screaming, what about the Pewter? Give the people the answer. And like, you're just getting dragged out.
In my day, when I covered the team on a daily basis, I more often than professionally would derail a media scrum with a uniform question.
Yeah, and it's carried over into me where like now I'll be at the NFL Combine and I'll be talking to UCF players. I'm like, what was your favorite UCF uniform combo? And the person next to me is like, just staring at me. But
there was a time, which I don't know if this is too much who cares? It was years ago. There was a time where I was freelancing for the Orlando Sentinel and I got a talking to about
really?
Question.
I love that. Let's stick on the Pewter stuff here with Doug Diamond's question. Why do you vouch so hard for Pewter when anthracite is clearly superior? I have issues with this question.
Bad take, Doug.
I can't, and I don't know. I mean, you remember every combo ever.
Yes.
But are any of your favorite combos in UCF history anthracite related?
Well, yeah. Unfortunately, for the sake of this.
Even if the answer was yes, you were supposed to say no because I set you up with that before talking to you about it. But
not a ton of them, though. I mean, anthracite was definitely the worst of those four.
I can't think, and I like anthracite. Like I don't have a problem with it. If they want to bring back both anthracite and Pewter, that's fine with me. But just some of the Pewter looks were some of my favorites in that whole era, and I don't know. I just don't feel the same way about anthracite. I don't have as many looks where I'm like, they got to bring that back because I want to see this look.
Yeah, there was the running joke with anthracite was they wore it for years, and there was always a chunk of the fan base that never knew it was a thing because it just looked so close to the black uniforms. I mean, the only real telltale difference was the outline on the numbers was black on the anthracite jersey, and it was gold on the black jerseys. But I mean, truthfully, there weren't many combos, if any, that looked better in anthracite than they would have just looked in black. I think one of the appeals for anthracite with UCF was that they could wear it for day games instead of black, which they've obviously done since. The science doesn't back that up the way people think it does, so that's not like that matters anyway. But anthracite was a nice, something different for combos here and there. It pumped up the combo numbers. Pewter genuinely added a different angle to what they could do with so many different combos, particularly the pewter helmet. And there was just so many more options there. And I also thought pewter fit really seamlessly into what UCF does because that sort of silver gray really is like a knight in shining armor type color. And it works well with gold. It works well with black. It works well with white. So they could just do a lot of cool stuff with it. Anthracite was always just like, half the stadium does not realize that they're not wearing black. Maybe even more than half the stadium. So it was just, pewter was more interesting to me than anthracite was.
Yeah. Just some of the, like the pewter, just some of the different ones that we got. I was just like, I love that look.
Which pewter, on and off part of the uniform combo from 2016 to 2021, we never actually just saw pewter helmets with black jerseys and black pants, which ironically is the literal concept photo that they announced the new uniforms with, and then we never saw it in 6 years. And I need it.
And I don't know. I don't think this is the case, but I also wonder if the 2017 AAC championship game plays a role in some of it. Maybe. Where everybody's memories, that everybody remembers that game, and they were wearing pewter black.
Which, can I drop a hot take?
What?
I don't think they should have worn that for the game.
Yeah, how did they get to wear that?
I don't know. I there's a lot to unpack there. So from my perspective, is just from a brand perspective, when UCF's playing for a trophy, I kind of wanted to see them in straight up black and gold.
We're going to do like rules like Clemson.
Well, but UCF is kind of in a, I don't know. There is no combo. It's an anthracite combo. So here you go. I have never been so angry at a UCF uniform combo than I was for the Fiesta Bowl in 2018 when they wore white helmets, anthracite jerseys, and white pants. That was so stupid for a game that big and just like that combo. And the other big thing was, I don't know why or how Memphis agreed to let UCF wear a light color at home, and they were going to wear. I don't know. I wonder what the backstory is there. I wonder if there was some kind of backstory. Maybe there was a reason for that. I don't know. I mean, it looked awesome. It was really cool.
Yeah,
black ice helmet.
I loved it.
Yep.
Yeah. Another question from Doug here, because we had we talked about this last time. I think people it was like, hey, here's a mailbag. Give us your questions. And they're like, what if I ask you a bunch of questions? Doug only asked us 2, but just saying. He said, if JRP stays healthy during the 2023 season, does UCF win at least 8 games?
No.
I don't think Timmy McClain was the problem in several of those losses. I don't think they magically beat Kansas if they have a healthy JRP.
I was gonna say JRP 3.5 games when all was said and done. It wasn't like some giant season swing, and I don't think I don't know. I guess Baylor, maybe you could swing Baylor. But I'm not swinging 2 or 3 games.
It's hard to imagine for me, just because you don't know how the game plays out at all. But it differently if JRP starts. But maybe he played a role. I don't put the Baylor collapse on Timmy. I don't. No, I don't either. I don't think that's so. I don't know if that result automatically flips. Maybe from the start. Maybe I don't know, because the offense was fine. They scored 36 points or whatever, 35 points. So JRP was a lot better in 2023 than he was in 2022, and a lot more balanced. He wasn't so up and down, but he still was never the type of quarterback who was going to just power them to wins, So I just don't buy some 2 or 3 win swing. What other games did he miss that year? Yeah. He missed Villanova and Kansas State and Baylor. Yeah, and then part of most of Kansas. He started Kansas, then clearly couldn't play, and then Timmy came. No, they don't win. I don't think they win any more games. I know that's the thing. I the only one I'm saying is maybe just the Baylor loss was such a cosmic fluke. If you just play it again with JRP, they win it. But that's kind of it. Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't. Also, I'm going to say it right now. It's 2025. That's the last JRP question we're ever taking on this podcast. I'm curious of the thought process behind that question. Just what does it matter now? Well, I do think there's something to be said of we're in for we don't know, but what's probably going to be a tough year or 2 here as UCF gets going under Frost. It is frustrating me how we didn't get anything good at, because it's now the success is so far back since they never did anything under Gus. And I'm it would have been nice if we could have had at least one season in there somewhere that we actually enjoyed. With that said, JP Gilbert He quote tweeted his own question from February 18th, 2024, and said, "You guys answered wrong last time and said no, so I'll give you another opportunity to be right." The question back then was, "Is Gus the worst UCF head coach in 20 years?" Trick question. The answer is yes. I went back and listened to.
What did we say? Did we really fight that? Because I feel like I wouldn't have fought that very hard.
We danced around it a little bit. You said that you could make an argument. This is going to be funny now that Frost is the head coach again. You said you could make an argument that every coach in the last 20 years has an argument for being the worst UCF coach.
That does sound like a thing I'd say.
I think you referenced the decline from Heupel is why he was the worst one, going from, he takes over a 13-0 team, then they go 12-1 straight, and they go in 10 games, and they're 6-4, and the recruiting sucked. I think I said George O'Leary had a worse win percentage than Gus, but George O'Leary also won 4 conference titles.
George O'Leary also took over a UCF program that
yes, and you made that
nothing
point.
Like
you made that point.
So we're just having the same conversation.
Yeah, he won 4 conference titles, won a Fiesta Bowl. Gus won nothing of anything significant. So I think at the time I was kind of like, I was leaning toward that, but I think we were also kind of just dancing around it. Now we can say, yeah, he was.
I can tell you my thought process on that now. I was not before what at the time was a highly anticipated UCF football season going to say, yeah, I think their head coach is the worst they've had in 2 decades.
I think that's a lot of what I was thinking too at the time.
Now that his era is over, I mean, I still kind of stand by you could kind of make a case for each of them, but because it's just kind of what you value, because it was 4 very different tenures. And I don't know. I will say that Malzahn is the only one walking away from UCF having not gone to a New Year's Six or BCS Bowl and really and not having won a conference title. All 3 of the other guys in the last 20 years did both those things, and he did.
Yeah, he broke a
streak. And George O'Leary built a stadium, and Scott Frost built a 13-0 team, and Josh Heupel was there, and Gus, nothing happened. Nothing of note happened. It was 4 years. And I think that's what's so frustrating looking back on the Gus era is, except for this past season where they were flat out bad, the first 3 years, they were just so viciously inoffensive. Like they were never very bad and they were never very good. They were always just existing in college football. And that for me was hell. So,
and they were also viciously close to like mattering a little bit. Like
always like right on the cusp and then can't. Yeah.
And they blew it in every chance. So
yeah, like I said, you can still probably pick. The Josh Heupel one is interesting because 28-8 is a really strong record, and they went undefeated, and they went to a Fiesta Bowl, and they won a conference title. But the decline is interesting, and I do wonder if Heupel had stuck, what would have happened from there. I
don't know. Yeah. I don't know, because I think even like that, we talked about it back when we answered this question a year ago. That 2019 season, they lost 3 games by a combined 7 points. Yep. Like. That's crazy that he went 28-8 and then 3 of those losses were by 7 points. Then there was the weird COVID year where it was
which was a COVID year. Yeah.
A lot of strange stuff happened that year. So I don't know.
The recruiting was scary. If they had been recruiting the way they had in the prior years, I wouldn't have been that worried about 2021 when we thought Heupel was coming back. It was just, they were recruiting so badly at that point.
But yeah, I'll agree with JP and say yes. This is another Gus Malzahn question. This is from our friend Chuck. He said, "Is Gus Malzahn the Jose Mourinho of UCF?"
Interesting. It's
a very interesting question. We lost some of the people here.
This is a very niche question.
It is. And there are elements where I would agree, and the comparison makes a lot of sense. What I would also say is that Gus Malzahn could only dream of having all the success that Jose Mourinho had before he got to Tottenham Hotspur in, when was that, 2019, 2020? Jose Mourinho is one of the best managers ever, won trophies everywhere he was before he got to Tottenham, and then things went bad. Then he left somewhere else and he won another trophy, and it's a Tottenham problem, and I don't want to talk about it.
Gus Malzahn isn't a big enough brand to fit the Mourinho comp, I feel like.
Yeah, but there's elements of it where, sure, like he was a big name who came
a big name who, you feel like it legitimizes you further, and oh my God, you're finally going to do all these things you wanted to do, and then it turns out it's not horrible.
I love that. I love how niche that question is. It's just, I don't know, it speaks to me.
I hope there's someone listening who's not you, me, or Chuck who appreciated that question. I feel like mathematically, there's a lot of Tottenham fans.
Yeah, so that's why I didn't want to spend. And there's a lot of fans out there. I don't know. That's why I don't want to spend too much time on it, because it could have taken a lot of time. People could have been like, I don't know what they're talking about. This is from UCF Zach, who right now he's inoffensive to me. We're on a better page right now. He's done things in the past where I think one time I threatened to suspend him from listening to the podcast because he was mean to a TCU fan that was being nice to us. And that was after other stuff.
Last week on the podcast, I said that I'm sick of fans and their uniform takes, and all that matters is if they wanted it or not, and I'm not letting it bother me. And then I tweeted a photo of a UCF helmet I liked, and he replied and said, "Did they win while wearing it?" So I'm still out on UCF Zach.
Okay, we might still be out on UCF Zach as a podcast. But he said, did you want to answer this one? Because this is getting into your personal life, and I guess my personal life.
I didn't really want to answer it, but you seemed excited to answer it.
Well, then you also said we're going to answer every question. So
that's true. I didn't say that.
We know that Bailey hangs out with the Buccaneers, but what does Christian do for work? My bet is he secretly runs Olive Garden's social media accounts. I'll clear the air that I don't hang out with the Buccaneers at all. I do cover the Bucs, but that is a part-time job. I don't even do that full-time. My full-time job is much more boring, and it's a marketing job. It's a SEO marketing. That's it. Not a lot to get into there.
Yeah, I'm supposed to have a job. I had no idea.
It's the Pegasus Podcast, your job. And
I'm just hanging out. I just talk on a podcast for an hour a week and cover things when I can, and that's pretty much it. I also work in marketing. It's like, I don't know. I'm not gonna overly. I also really don't need people messaging my company, so I'm just gonna we'll leave it at
that. Cool. Black and Gold Ed says, "What is your number one concern with Scott Frost as head coach, other than uniform combos?" So
damn it,
that was for you.
He took my answer right out of my mouth.
What is my number one concern? I mean, I think it's just, this is maybe not even a Scott Frost specific thing, but I think it's more so how much of an exodus there was of players after Gus left, and kind of how he's starting bare bones here again, kind of that it's just too much to come back from.
Yeah.
And that might not even be a Scott Frost thing. That might have been an anyone who came into the situation thing. But I think that's my number one concern is I think it's going to be a process, and whether or not he or anyone could succeed with this current situation is kind of up in the air.
Yeah.
That it for you?
Valid. No, mine is I don't like that he's gonna run the offense and call plays, presumably. That is number one for me. I just, guys, I know that we all want to see a Scott Frost offense again. Believe me, God, do I want to see a Scott Frost offense again. But a college football is so dramatically different than it was in 2017. And none of the big time head coaches are calling plays anymore. It's just not, there isn't time for that. And that was a big part of Gus's downfall, was not being able to make a decision. I mean, even Josh Heupel isn't calling plays at Tennessee anymore. It's just not, it's not a thing a head coach has time for in modern college football. And I'm worried that Frost is going to have to learn that the hard way. And maybe 2025 is a year where he learns that. And maybe I'm totally wrong. Maybe he's one of the very few who can make it work. But it's just, the whole thing is, it takes, you don't understand how much time of a single given day during a game week it takes to be preparing to call that game and preparing your offense for it. And those are so many hours being taken away from all the other things a head coach has to be now. And you are sacrificing in other places to do that. And the issue for me is that I don't believe that sacrifice is worth it in the way college football is set up now. So I hope to be wrong, because at the most basic level, I do really want to see a Scott Frost offense again. And I'd love to see him call. And I'm very skeptical that is going to work.
It's such a unique thing within college football, all that is being demanded of a head coach these days, because that is not at all. I think it's almost less common in the NFL for a coach to not be calling either the offense or the defense. Yeah. They are usually doing that. So it's just weird that you're in a space in college football now where it's so much is required of you: recruiting, NIL, working the boosters, just everything, managing your roster, and then seeing how you're going to build your roster from there. There's so much that goes into it. And then there's, I need to prepare to actually try to win this game.
Yeah. So where football has moved into is head coaches really need to act a lot more like GMs now than actual straight up coaches. And UCF's hired a GM. A lot of programs have hired GMs. So we'll see if they can make that balance work. Like I said, I'm not certain that this will fail. It's just, I don't like when UCF decides to do the opposite of what all the big time college footballers usually do. That's typically a red flag for me. And like I said, maybe he makes it work. And honestly, if there was ever a coach in a place that could combine to make it work, it might be UCF, in part just because Frost has so much built-in cred that it's not like he needs to be out there building that in the community and with boosters, with everything else. But honestly, one of the biggest things that's changed, that's required coaches to give up play calling, hasn't been working the boosters and trying to collect NIL money. It's been the fact that talent retainment and roster management is a 24 hours a day, 365 days a year job now. And it's really been a lot more of that. Gus Malzahn even alluded to that, how he felt like he had missed things in the locker room or players that were going to leave because he'd been too focused on play calling and not enough on that side of things. And I think Frost can be very good at that side of things. His players have loved him. He's a guy who knows how to build a strong culture. He's a guy who can connect to players, and players really, cherish that relationship with. So I think if he leans into that, it can be an incredibly powerful tool for retainment and building up a roster and recruiting and portal acquisitions and all of it. But, if you're spending 6, 7, 8 hours a day game planning, that's 6, 7, 8 hours. You don't really know what's going on in the locker room. You don't really know who's fed up. You don't really know who's going to your collective and asking for a raise, or who's getting DMs from another school. It's just a lot of stuff. And you're not out there sending those DMs and trying to get guys into your roster. So it's what do you sacrifice?
Maybe he's figured out how to add more hours to a day. I don't know. No one else knows what Scott Frost has. I don't know. All right, we've got some more to get
Can I say really quickly, one of my favorite things, because I was about to make the joke that he can just have someone run his Twitter account and they'll do all the DMs. And the Athletic, it does a lot of behind the scenes stories where they'll talk to recruits. And honestly, one of my favorite things that a lot of recruits say that they've had happen to them is like they will be DMing with their head coach on Twitter, and then their head coach will call them and be like, "Hey, what's up?" And they're like, "Oh, I'm DMing with a staffer who's running his account."
Yeah, no, I could see how that would be a thing that happens probably a lot.
Hopefully UCF doesn't try it.
Yeah. A couple from E. Alvarez 1211. He says, which game on next year's schedule are you most excited / intrigued for? Let's start with that one. Oddly, I just think it's North Carolina just because of the Bill Belichick stuff. Like, I don't know why. That's such a bonkers coaching matchup to me that I think that's the one I'm like, well, and the idea of like those two teams actually playing each other and not having it canceled.
Yeah,
that's
crazy
to me.
There's going to be a hurricane. That pencil in your hurricane for September 20th, guys.
Oh god.
Yeah, it's a lame answer, and I knew you were going to give it, so I wanted to give something different. But there just isn't it's North Carolina. It's Bill Bell. It's an ACC Big 12 matchup, which is always interesting. I also bad sign for me is I looked at the schedule and it's year 3, and I've already hit the I see the Big 12 teams. So I'm like, okay, it's like same old. I don't feel like that excitement anymore.
Well, I think it's also too early to know. I don't know which of these teams are going to be an intriguing one to play. So I think that's part of it is the most information I really have on the schedule so far, I think, is who was good this year. And also Bill Belichick's the new coach of North Carolina. And I don't know what their schedule is like. I don't remember. I might have looked at it once, but is that his first big game or first big road game? Because it probably has to be.
No, they opened the season with TCU.
Did they really?
Yeah.
That's a weird matchup. I don't know why. It just feels
weird. It's an August matchup. That's a week 0 matchup, I believe. But it goes TCU,
never mind.
At Charlotte, Richmond, and at UCF. So
okay.
Yeah, it's gonna be a big game just for the, and there's and I know the one half of it matters more to UCF, but it's just there's gonna be a lot of jokes about it. It's Scott Frost versus Bill Belichick. Is that the most unlikely coaching matchup ever? It's just insane that that's somehow happening. Literally right now, 1 month ago today almost. That would have been an insane thing to declare, and it's somehow happening next year. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah. This one could open up another hour of the podcast. Now that we are halfway through the first 12-team playoff, what are some realistic changes you think will be implemented by next year?
Do we want
I don't know if they can't change that, can they?
Oh, they're changing it. Yeah, they're already, the Dellinger and the Athletic have reported they're already making changes for next year because the SEC and Big Ten are being whiny little crybabies. What the expected change for next year, which needs unanimous approval, which means every conference needs to vote on it, and the other conferences are probably going to because they're afraid of pissing off the Big Ten and SEC because the 12-team playoff ends after next year. Spoiler alert, if you thought this was sticking around for 10 years, it's a 2-year thing, then it's gone. Is they're going to redo how the buys work. The way it worked this year was that the top 4 conference champions get a bye. The belief next year is that it's just going to go to the top 4 seeds because the SEC and Big Ten were angry that they, couldn't get multiple buys. And they also thought it was an affront that Boise State and Arizona State got buys, even though Arizona State literally went to overtime with a team that was supposed to kill them.
And should have beaten them.
Yeah. So I don't hate that. It's not something where I'm just so how dare they? It's more just I don't understand. The top 4, if they had gone by that, if that had been the rules this year, the top 4 seeds would have been the Big Ten title game participants and the SEC title game participants. And that issue to me is less a fairness thing or who deserves what. It's more just, wow, did you just even further devalue conference title games? If what is the point of the SEC title game if both those teams walk into it knowing they're both getting a first round bye either way? And I think the reason they don't care is because, like I said, it's a 1-year thing. It's the worst kept secret in America is that they're moving to a 14-team playoff after 2026. And in a 14-team playoff, there will only be 2 byes. I think everyone understands that the Big Ten and SEC title games will almost every single year be determining who gets those 2 byes. So that will add meaning back to those. But yeah, that's the change coming in the short term.
Okay.
I do think longer term, the Bulls are going to get cut out of this eventually, as long as the on-campus games keep performing in the first round.
Yeah. All right. This is from Randy. He said, how soon do you think until we see the submissions for the new kits? And do you think they will be a big overhaul like when Frost first got here in 2016? No, I don't think. I think it's tweaks.
I mean,
there's a big overhaul.
This is all based on Eric DeSalvo went on Sons of UCF and said that they were due for a refresh, and keep an eye on that for news this summer. Refresh to me doesn't scream uniform teardown. I don't think they need a uniform teardown. The uniforms that everyone has issues with of these past few years was not a teardown. It was a refresh of the 16 to 21. That's part of why I always laugh at the vitriol towards these uniforms versus the 2016 ones, is they're the same goddamn uniforms, man. Like the black and white jerseys are the same. They switched to a custom number font instead of a templated number font. They removed TV numbers. They tweaked the cuff color. It's kind of it. They made the Pegasus a little bigger. That was it. The big change was the alternates. They went from the old Nighthead alternates, which people didn't really like, to Nighthead to Night Mode and Light Mode, which I think were both objectively upgrades over those. So I'm assuming this will just be a further retooling, probably moving to whatever the newest template is. Nothing insane, which is fine. I mean, I like UCF has really good uniforms, and honestly, I like that they're in this middle ground where they stay cutting edge and they do a lot of cool stuff and a lot of really insane helmets, and they can do a lot of combos, but they also kind of have a look that's their look at this point too.
Yeah, I still like the old numbers better, but.
Yeah, I understand that. I don't fight with people a ton on that one because I understand I'm in the minority. And I think it's just because I'm too inside baseball. Like, I would always rather have an in-house custom number font than something that any team can ask Nike for. I know that people look at that as, oh, those were UCF's numbers. They really weren't. So for me, that's whatever. And I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me. I'll be curious if they stick with the number font they've used the last few years or do something else. They've had some really cool space number fonts they've come up with. So maybe it's some tweaked version of one of those. I don't know. We'll have to see.
Yeah. All right, we got 5 more. Try to rapid fire these.
Yeah. All right, rapid fire time. Sorry, everybody.
I don't even know what this one means. This is from TK. He says, "What are a couple spicy, way too early starting predictions as far as who's going to start games,
or is it just starting predictions for next season, or is it who's going to start games?"
I don't know. We're asking each other as if one of us sent that in.
Okay, UCF starting quarterback Ja'Carri Brown.
I would just say UCF starting quarterback Dylan Risk.
Okay. I don't even believe that, but it's spicy.
It is kind of spicy. I don't know if the Dylan Risk one is spicy. This is also from TK. Who outside of John Walker is most likely to be drafted in the next few years?
Me, next.
Okay. Sincere Edwards is my honest answer.
I looked at the roster and I couldn't find anybody. There's a chance some O-lineman does well and a team likes him. So
that's true. Yeah.
SJ2 said that Paul Rubel is a bona fide NFL prospect. So
yeah, I thought if that was the case, I thought he would have gone to the NFL draft this year. But
that's how much he loves UCF, man. Turning down a first-round NFL draft pick to come back to UCF.
This is from Sue H48. This is what is happening with special teams? Will there be a new coach? Will there be a player who is willing to attempt a return? Will we get a punter? Will the players be trained on the rules for kickoff/punt returns? I was at the ASU game in front of the end zone. I hope the answer to all of that is yes. I think the coaching that's probably coming down the line. As far as will a player return, Fair Catch Trent is gone. But I don't know. I don't know. The special teams thing makes me sad a little bit because I just remember how electric, obviously the Mike Hughes play, and then obviously how great Otis Anderson was, and just the last few years. And it's Xavier Townsend was always that big play waiting to happen until it was called back by a hold or something.
He had a couple really good ones called back over the years,
and then once he opted out, it was all right, now it's just kind of like let's get this special teams play over with, and then we'll see what happens.
Sue does bring up a strong point that they do need a punter. That's one of the things they need to acquire from the portal. So yes, if I were UCF, I would focus on having a punter of some sort by the time next season rolls around.
Nah, they'll just get their third string tight end to probably punt because he was able to. I mean, Evan Morris did the kickoffs. He was a kickoff special last year. Did a really good job. I know he's gone, but maybe they have another player on the roster who can just double as a punter. That'd be kind of funny. I'm kind of rooting for that.
Starting punter Tayven Jackson.
I mean, they're paying him, right? I don't know. Golden Knight 2 says, asks, given our track record, is it time to stop going after transfer quarterbacks? The last successful transfer quarterback was Brett Hodges, and he was okay at best. Big throwback. I don't think they can. Like, I don't think anyone really is at the point where, well, there's some bigger brands who probably can just keep recruiting their starting quarterbacks, but I don't know. UCF's going to have to keep dipping into the portal.
Can I just say how impressive it is that Golden Knight 2 managed to somehow bring Brett Hodges legitimately into a 2025 conversation? Like, that is not easy to do, and he found a way. But yeah, I do hope, and we'll see what happens. But it's not like like Scott Frost came in and just like Gus Malzahn was like, I hate quarterbacks I found in high school. I want guys from the portal. It's just what you have to do. Like, I mean, the quarterback room 3 weeks ago for UCF, the entire room was Dylan Risk and Ja'Kari Brown. You can't do that. Like, they had to go get Cam Fancher. They had to go get Tayven Jackson. So I don't think that UCF wants to. Yeah, I don't think that the Cam Fancher is already over. I don't think that UCF wants to, for the rest of time, always go after a transfer quarterback. It's just Gus mishandled the room pretty badly, and Scott Frost took over a room that had been mishandled. So there's not a lot there. And I'm sure they would like to land a freshman quarterback they can build around. And I think Gus probably thought he had done that with EJ Colson before he screwed that up like crazy. And it just, I don't think it's the plan forever, but for now they have to.
That one hurts me right now. Like, I just going into next year, like thinking, okay, EJ is going to be the guy. How much does that change? I don't know if it changes drastically. The ceiling, I don't know if the ceiling is drastically changed. They might still struggle, but as far as like, are they going to be fun? I think they would almost certainly be.
Bailey, it's EJ's fault. Why be on the field when Johnny Richardson was going to fumble?
He put himself in that position. He put himself in that position. He was like, "Oh no, my UCF career is going to end with this," pretty much. So that's
shout out to Purdue Boilermaker EJ Colson. Hope he has fun with Darren Hinshaw.
He probably will, man.
Sure, he will.
Yeah,
Purdue was the worst team in the Power 4 last year, so like ample opportunity to play.
He's going to be lighting it up. Last one we have is Matt Ryan Settle says, "What's the missing ingredient that Frost needs to bring to this program to jumpstart its success?"
You already know the answer.
A quarterback?
No, I was going to say pewter uniforms, but yeah, we can do.
I was like a Mackenzie Milton type quarterback, that guy that's just going to take the program. I don't know that a guy like that is coming down the pipeline, but
I mean, it is a quarterback at the end of the day. They haven't, and I'm not saying that they need to have a Mackenzie Milton every year. That's not possible. But I mean, for most of my life, UCF had a quarterback that was not always a superstar, but was someone that was an anchor for the team and someone who the fan base had some level of connection to, and someone who you could rely on. And they just haven't been able to. I mean, God, it's Dylan Gabriel, and since then, it's just been several years of fans fighting over who should be out there, and the coach is not sure who should be out there, and them starting a revolving door of quarterbacks. And it's like, the missing ingredient is just one guy who it's been so long since UCF started a season, and I could say the words, I feel great about who they've got at quarterback. It's been a very long time, and that's what we need back.
Yeah, it is. I don't know. And it's not, I don't think we're gonna get that this year, but hopefully next year. I did say that was the resolution I had for Scott Frost in 2025 is find that guy that's going to be your guy going into 2026. And we'll see. We'll see if it happens. Time to quickly jump into the RJ Harvey football news part 2. Just a couple things. Kobe Hudson and Amari Kite are also now participating in the Hula Bowl practices. And so that's one of the, obviously, the college all-star game. And then more college all-star game news. Deshaun Pace accepted an invite to the East-West Shrine Bowl, which this year I believe is in Texas. So yeah, those three joining a couple guys that are already at the Hula Bowl or had already been announced as Hula Bowl participants. And then a couple more are going to be at the Senior Bowl later this month. So that'll be cool. Game of the week time. I'm suspending game of the week this week because last week my game of the week was UCF basketball against Kansas, and then they went out and lost by like 78 points. And
Bailey's got to go to a game. We can't talk. Sorry, we're out of time. Can't talk about that. Sorry.
Yep, that's true. Can't talk about it. But I'm suspending game of the week because of that. There's no game of the week, even though there are games being played. Tweet of the week.
Tweet of the week goes to Clayton Moody, who replied to Defalk's Olive Garden post and said that Gus's, quote, unlimited soup, salad, and breadsticks. He actually said unlimited salad, soup, and breadsticks, which is like the biggest sign that you don't know what you're talking about. He also made breadsticks 2 words. I don't know what's going on, Clayton. He said, you were really excited at first, and it's sort of good, but the longer it goes on, the more tired and bland it gets. When Stephen Leonard correctly pushed back against that nonsense, he said, I feel like you can only have so much soup before you're tired of soup. Those are 2 of the most ice-cold takes I've ever seen in my life. 2 things there. First off, unlimited soup, salad, and breadsticks at Olive Garden is both cheap and delicious and awesome. The pasta visual in particular is fantastic. Zuppa Toscana is fantastic. Chicken gnocchi is fantastic. I swear to God, they're not paying me money, guys. I just really like Olive Garden, and I don't know how. Like I've obviously had many unlimited soup, salad, and breadstick encounters in my life, and I've never gotten tired of it. And you're nuts if you think that. And on a broader scope outside of Olive Garden, to say that you can only have so much soup before you're tired of soup is one of the most unhinged comments I've ever heard in my life. Soup is delicious. Soup is excellent. And if you don't understand soup, then that's a you problem. And I feel bad that you have to exist in this world filled with so many delicious soups, not being able to experience and enjoy them all to their height. So sorry.
It's great soup weather right now, actually.
Okay, I actually have a problem with that. I'm sick of this whole, like, yes, it's nice to eat soup when it's cold, but like as someone who lives in Florida, we got to stop with that you can only do things when it's cold. I will have soup on a 95-degree day, and soup is delicious.
I will not.
Really? Yeah. Well, you also, you have issues.
Okay, thanks.
I don't like your food takes on a lot of things, but that's neither here nor there.
All right, man. I'll be moving on now to saying goodbye. Thanks for everybody for joining us. We will be back next week with episode 252. Until then, you can find us on Twitter at BaileyJAdams22, at @ByCASimmons, at Night Sports Now, and at Pegasus Podcast. Thank you guys so much for being with us. Thank you for your questions, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye, everybody.